The X-ray looked normal at first. A small metal object sat in the soft tissue of a man's hand. The radiologist thought it was a piece of steel from a work accident. But when the surgeon took it out 3 days later, something was very wrong. The object was wrapped in a strange membrane. This membrane had no reason to exist. The metal contained elements that don't naturally exist together, and the patient had no memory at all of how it got inside him. This wasn't the only case. Over the past 40 years, doctors around the world have removed strange objects from ordinary people. These people say they don't know how the objects got there. Some patients report missing time, hours they simply can't account for. Others describe weird encounters they can barely remember. A few wake up with scars they never had before, marks that appeared overnight without explanation. The objects themselves range from tiny metal fragments to complex devices. They look almost like they were engineered by someone. Scientists who have studied them remain completely confused. Doubters call it mass delusion, or people seeking attention. Believers say it's proof we're not alone in the universe. The mystery started showing up in medical books in the late 1980s. Dr. Roger Leir was a foot surgeon in California. He worked mainly on feet and ankles. He became the first doctor to study these strange cases carefully. His first case came without warning in 1995. A woman named Patricia visited his office. She complained of constant pain in her foot. She believed something was stuck in her toe, but she had no idea what it could be. X-rays showed a small triangle-shaped object. It was lodged deep in the tissue, far deeper than any surface wound could explain. When Leir took it out during what should have been routine surgery, he noticed something deeply odd. The object was surrounded by a gray biological membrane. His surgical tools could barely cut through it. The membrane seemed to be made of nerve and blood cells, yet it showed absolutely no signs of swelling. There was no sign the body was fighting it. This was highly unusual. Foreign objects normally trigger strong immune responses. The body recognizes them as invaders. It attacks them. But this one had been accepted as if it belonged there, as if it were part of Patricia's natural body. Leir sent the object to a materials lab for testing. The results shocked him and the lab workers. The core contained a metal mix with iron as its base, but it also had tiny amounts of elements rarely found together. Not in nature, not in industry. The outer membrane was impossible to explain easily. It wasn't scar tissue from an old injury. It wasn't a cyst or any known biological formation. Under a powerful microscope, it showed a crystal-like structure. Nothing in standard medical books looked like it. The cells were arranged in patterns that suggested careful organization, not random growth. Patricia herself had no explanation that made sense. She had no memory of any injury to her foot, no surgery in her past, no accident that could possibly account for the object being there. When pressed for any unusual experiences, she slowly mentioned recurring dreams of bright lights, strange beings standing over her, but she quickly dismissed them as mere nightmares, nothing more than products of an overactive imagination. Leir wrote down every detail of the case carefully. He published his findings in smaller medical journals. He expected harsh criticism from the medical world. Instead, he received dozens of phone calls, people claiming they too had mysterious objects in their bodies. Over the next 10 years, Leir performed 16 surgeries to remove what he began calling strange implants. Each case followed a very similar pattern. The pattern couldn't be explained by coincidence. The patients had no conscious memory of the objects being put in. X-rays revealed shapes and densities that didn't match typical foreign bodies, things like glass or metal splinters. Surgical removal proved unexpectedly difficult. This was because of the unusual biological membranes covering them, and lab analysis kept showing material mixes that didn't make sense. They defied normal scientific explanation. One man named Timothy had a small rod-shaped object deep in his shin bone. He discovered it by accident during a medical scan for an unrelated sports injury. When Lear removed it in surgery, the object measured less than 1 centimeter long, but it contained multiple metal layers of different compositions. Lab tests found unusual metal ratios. They were not consistent with known Earth sources. The metal didn't match any natural formation on our planet. It didn't match factory-made metals either. Timothy recalled waking up with a small puncture wound on his leg years earlier. This happened shortly after a solo camping trip in a remote area. But at the time, he thought it was just an insect bite, nothing more. Another patient was a woman named Dorothy. She had 2 separate objects in her right hand. She first noticed small lumps under her skin after a disturbing event. She had been driving home late one evening. She experienced a period of missing time. She remembered seeing unusual lights hovering in the sky. They were above the highway. They seemed to follow her car for several miles. Then, nothing. Her memory simply went blank. A complete gap. The next thing she knew, she was parked on the side of the road. In an unfamiliar location. She was 2 hours later than she should have been. Small lumps appeared under her skin within days of this incident. Medical pictures showed metal fragments. They appeared to give off faint signals. When surgically removed, both objects were coated in the same biological membrane, the same one Lear had seen before. Dorothy described feeling strangely compelled to have them removed, as if something deep inside her mind knew they didn't belong in her body. The science community responded to Lear's work with deeply mixed reactions. Big medical journals flatly refused to publish his findings. They cited lack of peer review. They said his claims were too extraordinary. Critics argued strongly that the objects could be explained through ordinary means. Perhaps they were factory fragments from forgotten workplace accidents. Perhaps old metal pieces from military service or childhood mishaps. Perhaps even deliberate self-insertion, something that patients had blocked out or chosen to forget. The biological membranes, they insisted, were simply the body's natural response, the way it wraps any foreign material. But this normal explanation failed to account for all the troubling evidence. Standard foreign bodies trigger visible swelling and immune responses. They cause pain, localized swelling, gradual rejection by the body's defense systems. These mysterious objects showed none of those clear signs. They fit in seamlessly with surrounding tissue, as if they had always been there. Some even appeared to have nerve connections growing directly into them. This suggested not just tolerance, but actual biological joining over long periods of time. Lear worked with materials, scientists, and physicists at different places. They wanted to analyze the removed objects more thoroughly. Labs in New Mexico, California, and Texas looked at the samples. They used the most advanced testing methods available. Tests revealed highly unusual element combinations that raised more questions than answers. Some objects contained nickel and iron in ratios not found in any known space rocks. They weren't in factory metals either, not in any scientific databases. Others included significant tiny amounts of computer chip elements, things like germanium and gallium. This suggested possible electronic properties. One particularly unusual fragment was analyzed at Los Alamos National Laboratory. It showed unusual signs that differed from Earth norms, though the lab carefully stopped short of claiming it came from space. The biological membranes surrounding the objects remained equally puzzling to doctors who study tissue. Medical experts noted they contained both skin cells and nerve tissue. They were arranged in patterns that didn't match any known naturally occurring tissue type. Not in human anatomy. The cell organization suggested some form of directed growth, not random biological response. It was as if the membrane had been designed to connect between the foreign object and human tissue. Critics were quick to point out something. Highly advanced materials do exist in airplane and computer industries. Perhaps these mysterious objects were simply fragments from accidents involving exotic metals used in experimental technology. But this reasonable idea struggled badly to explain a crucial point. Why did so many patients have absolutely no contact with such materials? Dorothy worked as a small-town librarian, surrounded by books and quiet readers. Timothy was a middle school teacher. He spent his days with students and textbooks. Patricia ran a modest family bakery. She worked with flour and ovens. None of them had careers involving unusual metals. None worked anywhere near advanced factory equipment. And none could recall any accidents at all. Accidents that would account for objects being lodged so deeply in their tissue. No visible scarring, no memory of traumatic injury. The mystery extended well beyond Leah's California practice. Other doctors across the country began reporting eerily similar cases. This happened after his work gained wider attention in specialized medical circles. A surgeon in Arizona removed a perfectly round, tiny metal ball. It came from a patient's jaw. It was embedded near the jaw joint. A skin doctor in Oregon took out a see-through fiber. It came from someone's forearm. The material couldn't be identified. An emergency room doctor in Texas found a precisely triangle-shaped implant. It was taken from a frightened child's leg. The parents had noticed unusual swelling. In virtually every case, the patients described remarkably similar experiences, episodes of missing time they couldn't explain, strange lights in the sky that seemed to follow them, unexplained scars that appeared overnight without injury, vivid dreams or broken memories. Memories of being watched by non-human beings with large, dark eyes. The consistency of these accounts was striking. They came from completely unrelated people in vastly different geographic locations. This suggested an underlying pattern, something that couldn't be easily dismissed as mere coincidence. Not collective delusion, not copycat claims seeking attention. One of the most medically compelling cases involved a man named Robert. He worked as an electrical engineer in Nevada. In 1998, he began having increasingly severe headaches. He also developed unusual sensitivity to electronics. Electronic devices seemed to break down consistently in his immediate presence. His wristwatch stopped working repeatedly. It required constant battery replacements. Desktop computers would freeze or crash for no reason. This happened when he sat down to use them. Even his car's electronic systems began showing problems on and off. An MRI scan was performed to investigate his worsening headaches. It revealed a small foreign object embedded deep in his sinus cavity. The location was dangerously close to critical brain structures. Brain surgeons initially refused completely to operate. They said the location was far too risky for elective surgery. But as Robert's terrible symptoms continued to worsen dramatically, they changed their minds. The symptoms were affecting his ability to work and function normally. They reluctantly agreed to attempt the delicate removal. The surgery lasted more than 3 hours. It proved far more complicated than expected. The object was extraordinarily difficult to remove. It had formed extensive connections with surrounding nerve tissue, almost as if it had been actively growing roots into his nervous system. When the surgeons finally managed to remove it intact, the object measured just 4 millimeters in length, but under magnification it appeared to have multiple distinct internal parts. Under high-powered microscopy, it revealed what looked remarkably like miniature electronic circuits, with patterns suggesting deliberate design and specific function. Electrical engineers carefully examined Robert's implant. They noted structural features entirely consistent with sophisticated sensor technology. The object contained what appeared to be a microscopic converter, possibly designed to change biological electrical signals into different forms of energy, or perhaps to receive and transmit information. Detailed materials tests showed a precision-made titanium alloy shell. It surrounded an intricate core of silicon and copper. These were arranged in geometric patterns. The deliberate arrangement strongly suggested intentional manufacturing and assembly, not any random natural formation, not industrial contamination. Robert himself retained only broken memories of a disturbing encounter. It occurred several years before his symptoms began. He vividly recalled driving alone through a particularly remote desert area. This was late at night. His car's engines suddenly died without warning. All electrical systems failed at once. He saw bright lights rapidly approaching from the dark sky above. Then his memory simply stopped, as if someone had switched off his consciousness. The next thing he clearly remembered was waking up hours later. He was still sitting in his vehicle, but it was now mysteriously parked several miles from where he had originally stopped. His car started normally, as if nothing had happened, but he felt profoundly different afterward, fundamentally changed in ways he couldn't put into words. He became acutely sensitive to his electromagnetic environment, constantly aware of electrical fields and radio waves around him. The persistent headaches began appearing about 2 years after that strange night in the desert. Doubters offered various other explanations for unusual cases like Robert's. Perhaps the objects were actually medical implants from minor surgeries that patients had simply forgotten over the years. Perhaps they resulted from long-forgotten childhood accidents, now lost to the unreliable fog of distant memory. Maybe some desperate or disturbed patients had even deliberately put foreign objects into their own bodies for psychological attention, or to manufacture physical support for beliefs they already had. Beliefs about alien contact and abduction. These normal possibilities couldn't be entirely ruled out through evidence alone, but such ordinary explanations struggled mightily to account for the substantial material evidence that kept piling up. Standard medical implants consistently use easily recognizable materials. They follow well-documented designs catalogued in medical device databases. They invariably show up clearly in detailed medical records and surgical histories. They certainly don't form complex biological connections with nerve tissue, not in the sophisticated ways these mysterious objects demonstrated, and they absolutely don't give off measurable electromagnetic signals. They don't display unusual metal ratios. They don't show evidence of microscopic circuits and deliberate engineering. The unusual electromagnetic properties of several removed implants particularly fascinated scientists and engineers. Multiple objects, surgically removed by Lair and other doctors, showed decidedly odd responses. This happened when exposed to various radio frequencies in controlled lab settings. When placed in electromagnetic fields of specific wavelengths, some objects began spontaneously giving off their own distinct signals, almost as if they were attempting to communicate or transmit data. A small device recovered from a patient in Florida appeared to broadcast a steady signal. It was at precisely 93 megahertz. This happened when stimulated by radio waves. Another implant from a patient in Oregon responded measurably to microwave radiation. It produced a small but detectable electric current through an unknown mechanism. These weren't merely passive pieces of inert metal sitting dormant in human tissue. They demonstrated characteristics and behaviors of active electronic components with specific functions. Yet their remarkably compact size and sophisticated internal construction didn't match any known human technology. Not from the historical periods when they were presumably inserted into the patients. The engineering was too advanced, too miniaturized for the eras in question. Believers in extraterrestrial contact and intervention saw these scientific findings as powerful proof supporting their long-held convictions. The objects, they argued with increasing confidence, were clearly tracking devices, or biological monitoring equipment, perhaps even sophisticated communication tools deliberately placed by non-human intelligences for purposes we couldn't fully understand. The seamless biological integration with human tissue suggested incredibly advanced biotechnology, technology operating far beyond current human scientific and medical capabilities. The episodes of missing time and the strange encounters consistently reported by patients fit well-established patterns documented extensively in alien abduction literature spanning decades. Thousands upon thousands of ordinary people had independently reported remarkably similar experiences over many years, describing involuntary medical procedures performed aboard craft, performed by gray-skinned beings with disproportionately large dark eyes and small bodies. Many of these witnesses specifically mentioned being told by their captors something that they were specially chosen for ongoing study or long-term biological monitoring. Some retained broken but vivid memories, memories of seeing small objects being carefully inserted into their bodies through advanced procedures. The physical evidence of actual removable implants now seemed to provide tangible material support for accounts that mainstream society had long dismissed as pure fantasy, delusion, or attention-seeking behavior. But even strong supporters of the extraterrestrial idea honestly admitted significant gaps and inconsistencies in the available evidence. Not all people who claimed alien abduction experiences had any detectable implants. Even when thoroughly examined with advanced medical pictures, not all implant cases involved clear abduction memories or missing time episodes. Some people discovered unusual objects embedded in their bodies without reporting any paranormal experiences, any unusual experiences whatsoever. A construction worker in Tennessee found a metal fragment lodged in his forearm. This happened after what appeared to be a straightforward work accident. Medical examination revealed the object had legitimately unusual material properties that couldn't be easily explained, but the man reported absolutely no missing time, no strange lights, no weird encounters of any kind to go with the physical finding. This troubling inconsistency suggested the possibility of multiple different origins for these strange objects. Some implants might genuinely be extraterrestrial in nature, placed by visiting intelligences. Others could represent Earth-based oddities we don't yet understand. Unknown natural occurrences that mimic artificial objects, or perhaps even secret human experiments using classified technology. The psychological and emotional dimension of the implant mystery complicated scientific analysis even further. Many implant patients reported persistent symptoms entirely consistent with severe stress disorder, the kind that comes after trauma. They described chronic worry, severe sleep problems, and intrusive, unwanted memories that disrupted their daily lives. Critics seized on this observation. They suggested it indicated primarily psychological trauma, not physical trauma from actual experiences. Perhaps the implants themselves were elaborate mind-created manifestations of deeper, unresolved emotional issues. The mind creating apparent physical symptoms from mental distress. Yet, this psychological idea utterly failed to explain the undeniable physical objects themselves. X-rays and CT scans don't lie or imagine things. Surgical removals produce tangible samples that can be held, weighed, and photographed. Lab analysis yields objective, measurable data about composition and structure. Whatever psychological or emotional factors might be involved in patients' subjective experiences, something genuinely real and material clearly existed embedded in these people's bodies. That fundamental fact couldn't be explained away through psychology alone. By the early 2000s, the implant mystery had quietly attracted serious attention from military and intelligence circles. Classified documents later released through persistent Freedom of Information Act requests revealed something startling. Government agencies had been monitoring reports of strange objects in civilian bodies for many decades, far longer than the public realized. A 1967 internal memo from the Air Force explicitly discussed an unusual case, a case involving a military pilot who claimed to have a foreign object embedded in his leg. The insertion supposedly occurred shortly after a close encounter. An encounter with an unidentified aerial craft during a routine training flight. A 1989 detailed report from a defense contractor carefully analyzed unusual materials recovered from a civilian who made serious allegations of alien contact and abduction. The documents clearly showed sustained official interest spanning decades, but they drew absolutely no definitive conclusions. No conclusions about the true nature or origin of the objects. The agencies neither confirmed nor denied potential extraterrestrial involvement. They maintained exactly the same frustrating lack of clarity, the same official silence that characterized the entire mystery in public discussion. One particularly disturbing and ethically troubling case emerged in 2003. A teenage girl named Amanda discovered a small, unusual lump. It was on the side of her neck. She was only 16 years old. She had no documented history of any surgery or significant injuries that could explain it. Her worried parents took her to their family doctor. The doctor immediately ordered an ultrasound examination. The diagnostic scan revealed a small cylinder-shaped foreign object. It was embedded deep in the muscle tissue, far too deep to have gotten there through any surface wound or minor accident. When surgeons carefully removed it in an outpatient procedure, they found a metal rod. It was approximately 1 centimeter in length. It was surrounded by the now disturbingly familiar biological membrane, the same membrane that other researchers had documented. Amanda initially had absolutely no memory of how the object could have gotten into her body. But under carefully controlled hypnotic regression therapy, something changed. The therapy was conducted by a properly licensed clinical psychologist. She recalled a terrifying experience from 4 years earlier. When she was only 12 years old, she described being completely unable to move. She was lying in her bed late at night. Strange figures stood silently around her in the darkness. She remembered seeing an impossibly bright light that seemed to come from nowhere, a distinct sensation of floating or being lifted. She felt something being deliberately placed into her neck, but found herself utterly powerless to resist or cry out. Her concerned parents had initially dismissed this disturbing account, dismissed it as nothing more than a vivid nightmare or sleep paralysis. But the undeniable physical evidence of a real implant forced them to seriously reconsider their assumptions. Amanda's case raised significant ethical questions about the appropriate use of hypnotic regression therapy in implant investigations. Critics correctly noted that such controversial techniques could potentially create entirely false memories. Rather than reliably recovering real suppressed ones, subjects under deep hypnosis are highly open to suggestion. They may unconsciously make up detailed experiences based on cultural expectations, popular media depictions, or subtle leading questions from the therapist. The human mind is remarkably creative and surprisingly unreliable when attempting to fill in gaps in memory or reconstruct past events. This scientific reality didn't necessarily mean Amanda's frightening experience was completely false or made up, only that it couldn't be independently verified through hypnosis alone, which is not considered reliable evidence. The small implant itself remained the only truly concrete physical evidence that something real had occurred. Lab analysis confirmed it contained nickel, iron, and traces of several highly unusual elements in unexpected combinations. But its actual origin remained genuinely uncertain. How it got into her body remained open to interpretation. The contentious debate over alien implants intensified significantly. This happened when a group of credible scientists attempted the first truly systematic and rigorous study. This was in 2006. Researchers from several respected universities worked together. They wanted to comprehensively examine a sizable collection of extracted objects. They used the most sophisticated analytical techniques then available. They employed advanced scanning electron microscopy, precise mass spectrometry, and detailed breakdown analysis. They wanted to characterize every aspect of the specimens. Their carefully reviewed findings were eventually published in a legitimate peer-reviewed engineering journal. They essentially confirmed many previous informal observations about genuinely unusual material properties. Several analyzed objects showed measurable element ratios significantly inconsistent with any known terrestrial sources, whether natural geological formations or industrial manufacturing processes. Others displayed clear structural features highly suggestive of deliberate, careful manufacturing rather than random natural formation. Yet even this rigorous scientific paper stopped well short of claiming definitive extraterrestrial origin. The cautious authors noted something. While the studied objects were certainly strange and unexplained, alternative possibilities couldn't be completely excluded. These included unknown industrial processes, secret military applications, or rare natural occurrences they didn't yet understand, all based solely on available evidence. This carefully hedged conclusion disappointed and frustrated both passionate believers and hardcore doubters in equal measure. Believers desperately wanted clear, unambiguous proof of alien involvement, something they could point to. Doubters equally wanted definitive evidence of mundane, conventional origins, something they could use to dismiss the entire mystery. Instead, everyone got uncomfortable uncertainty. The objects were legitimately unusual, but not definitively proven to be alien in origin. They showed clear evidence of design features, but not necessarily extraterrestrial engineering. They came from ordinary people reporting extraordinary experiences, but experiences that conceivably could have had psychological rather than physical external causes. The elusive truth seemed to hover frustratingly in an uncomfortable middle ground, a place where absolute certainty remained impossible. All conclusions stayed tentative. More cases continued to surface throughout the 2010s and into the 2020s. A musician in Canada had a small disc removed from behind his ear. He had no memory of how it got there. A nurse in Australia discovered a triangle-shaped piece in her ankle. She found it during a routine medical exam. A retired military officer in Britain took out a tiny sphere from his shoulder. He did this after years of unexplained pain. Each case added to the growing database, a database of strange implants. Patterns emerged from the combined data. Most objects were small. They ranged from 2 to 15 millimeters. Most were metal or contained metal components. Most were found in arms and legs or near major nerve pathways, and most patients reported at least some form of unexplained experience around the time they believed the object appeared. A particularly interesting case came from Japan in 2015. A businessman named Hiroshi began experiencing severe migraines. He also developed an unusual ability to sense approaching thunderstorms, hours before they arrived. Medical imaging revealed a small object near his temporal lobe. When removed, it appeared to have a crystalline structure, unlike anything the surgical team had seen before. Hiroshi remembered a camping trip 3 years earlier. He recalled waking up in his tent, finding himself outside the tent. With no memory of how he got there, he had a small mark behind his ear. The mark had healed by morning. In Brazil, a farmer named Carlos reported finding an object in his calf muscle in 2017. He discovered it after his leg began to glow faintly in complete darkness. Doctors were skeptical until they examined him. The object was indeed emitting a very faint bioluminescence. When extracted, lab tests showed it contained phosphorescent compounds not found in any natural biological process. Carlos recalled seeing a bright, disc-shaped craft hover over his field one night. His cattle had scattered in panic. The next morning, his leg was sore, but he saw no visible injury. A schoolteacher in Scotland named Margaret had an implant removed in 2018. She had noticed a small lump in her forearm. It appeared after a holiday in the Highlands. Under X-ray, the object showed an unusual honeycomb structure. When surgeons removed it, they found it was incredibly lightweight, almost impossibly so for its metallic composition. Margaret described waking up during her holiday, waking in a field far from her cottage. She had no shoes on. Her feet were clean despite the muddy terrain. She lost 4 hours that night, time she could never account for. Dr. Lear passed away in 2014, but his legacy continued strongly. He had documented his work in books and lectures. This inspired others to investigate the mystery seriously. Before his death, he expressed deep frustration. Mainstream science refused to engage with the evidence. He argued that dismissing the implants as delusion or misidentification was intellectually lazy. The objects existed, the materials were real, the biological connection was demonstrable. These facts deserved rigorous study, regardless of their implications. His critics maintained that extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence so far fell short. It didn't prove alien involvement. The most recent high-profile case occurred in 2019. A software engineer named Marcus began having unusual symptoms. This happened after a hiking trip in Colorado. He developed bad headaches. He claimed to hear faint humming sounds, sounds that others couldn't detect. Medical scans found a tiny object near his hearing nerve. Brain surgeons successfully removed it. The surgery was delicate. The object measured just 3 millimeters, but it seemed to have multiple layers. Materials tests found it contained titanium, silicon, and trace amounts of rare earth elements. Marcus remembered seeing strange lights during his hike. He lost track of time for several hours. He woke up with a small scab behind his ear. He first thought it was from a branch scratch. The implant was discovered 3 months later. His symptoms had become unbearable. What makes the implant mystery so challenging is its resistance to simple explanation. If these were totally made up or mental, we wouldn't have physical objects to study. If they were just factory accidents, the materials would match known metals, and the patients would remember the incidents. If they were deliberate fakes, we would expect more dramatic cases designed for attention. Not the quiet suffering most patients endure. The mystery exists in a gray area. Physical evidence meets personal claims. Scientific data crosses paths with testimony. Normal explanations feel inadequate, yet extraordinary ones lack clear proof. Some researchers have suggested the implants represent a form of contact between humans and non-human intelligence, but not necessarily the dramatic alien visits of popular culture. Maybe they are markers left by watchers from another dimension or another time. Maybe they are test devices placed by a hidden Earth group, a group with access to advanced technology beyond public knowledge. Maybe they are something totally different, something we lack the framework to understand. The objects themselves offer clues, but not answers. They are physically real, yet their function stays mysterious. They show evidence of design, yet their purpose stays unclear. They connect with human biology in ways that suggest compatibility, yet their origin stays uncertain. The patients who carry these objects live with questions that may never be fully answered. They know something unusual entered their bodies. They have scars and X-rays to prove it, but they may never know who placed them there, or why. Some find this uncertainty freeing. They are freed from needing a clear explanation. Others find it maddening. They are haunted by the gap between what they experienced and what they can prove. A few claim ongoing contact. They describe feelings of being watched or guided. Most simply want to understand what happened to them and whether it will happen again. Doctors who have seen these cases face their own problems. Do they report findings that could hurt their reputations? Do they do surgeries to remove objects that might not be causing harm? Do they deal with patients' experience claims, or focus only on the physical evidence? The answers vary by person and situation. Some doctors have become supporters for serious study. Others have backed away from the controversy entirely. The medical world as a whole has stayed mostly silent, neither supporting nor debunking the mystery in any official way. As technology gets better, new methods may reveal more about these mysterious objects. Special sensors could detect properties invisible to current tools. Advanced pictures might show structures too small for present microscopes. Genetic tests of the membranes could find markers of artificial changes or unusual biological processes. Each improvement in our tools brings the chance of new discoveries, but it also brings the risk of deeper mysteries. What if advanced tests confirm these objects are beyond current human technology? What if they reveal the objects are hundreds or thousands of years old? What if they show the objects are still active, still sending signals, still performing functions we can't see? The implant mystery forces us to face uncomfortable possibilities about our place in the universe and our knowledge of our own bodies. It suggests that some among us may be carrying evidence of contact with something other, whether that something is from space, another dimension, or Earth but hidden. The meaning is profound. We like to believe we control our bodies. We like to think we know what happens to them. The existence of these objects challenges that belief. They represent invasions we didn't agree to, invasions we often don't remember. They mark us as subjects in an experiment we didn't volunteer for, an experiment we can't fully understand. The people who have had these objects removed describe mixed feelings: relief at having the foreign thing gone from their bodies, loss of a real connection to an experience they can barely put into words. Some keep the removed objects as proof of what happened to them. Others want nothing to do with them. They refuse to look at the samples. A few have reported that after removal, they miss something, a sense of connection or guidance they didn't realize they had. It is as if the objects served a purpose that only becomes clear once they are gone. This raises another disturbing possibility. What if removal has consequences? What if these objects are not just watching devices? What if they are part of a larger system or experiment? What if taking them out disrupts something we don't understand? The question of permission haunts this entire mystery. If these objects are put in on purpose, the beings responsible never asked. Patients wake up changed, marked, carrying something foreign inside them. This breaks basic rules of body control and medical ethics. Even if the reasons behind the placements are good or scientific, the lack of permission makes them deeply troubling. We make it a crime when humans do medical procedures without permission. What standard should apply to procedures by non-human beings? How do we seek answers when we can't even clearly identify who or what is responsible? Some patients have tried to turn their experiences into something positive. They speak at meetings, they write books, they support others going through similar ordeals. They form support networks, places where people with implants can share their stories, share without fear of mockery. These communities provide acceptance and understanding that the broader world often won't give. Within them, the implant experience is normal. It is accepted as real and important. Outside them, patients often face doubt, mockery, or dismissal. This social side adds another layer of suffering to an already painful situation. It is one thing to carry a mysterious object in your body. It is another to be told that object is a delusion, told this when you know otherwise. The science process demands repeat testing and proof. But how do you repeat something you can't control or predict? You cannot ethically put objects in test subjects. You can't study body connection that way. You cannot summon whoever or whatever places these objects. You can't make them produce more cases on demand. You are left studying a mystery that shows itself on its own terms and timeline. This puts implant research in a hard spot. It makes case studies and material tests, but struggles to make the controlled tests that mainstream science needs for acceptance. The data builds up but stays broken. suggestive rather than final. Meanwhile, the objects sit in labs and private collections, silent witnesses to experiences we struggle to understand. Some have been destroyed in tests, broken down to their basic elements. In the search for answers, others stay intact, kept as evidence for future study. Each one represents a story, a person whose life was changed by something they didn't invite, something they can't fully explain. The metal pieces are not just science curiosities. They are deeply connected to human lives, human suffering, and human attempts to make sense of the unexplainable. What if these implants are just the visible edge, the edge of something much larger? What if countless people carry similar objects but never find them? What if the technology has advanced to the point where current implants can't be detected by medical pictures? What if this has been happening not for decades but for centuries or longer, hidden in an era before X-rays and MRI scans could show them? History is full of accounts of people claiming contact with non-human beings, medieval fairy kidnappings, ancient tales of gods taking human subjects, modern alien encounters. Maybe these are all different cultural ways of seeing the same basic mystery, one that includes physical invasions like implants. The implant patients live at the meeting point of certainty and doubt. They are certain something happened to them. They have the scars, they have the removed objects to prove it, but they doubt their own memories and understandings. They question whether what they recall is accurate or influenced by cultural stories about aliens and kidnappings. They wonder if their experiences were as dramatic as they remember, or if memory has exaggerated them over time. This internal uncertainty adds to the external doubt they face. Even when they want to believe, part of them questions. Even when they know something real happened, they can't escape the possibility that their understanding of it is wrong. As we continue to see these cases, we are forced to ask, what would be proof? What level of evidence would satisfy both believers and doubters? If an object shows clear signs of being made, is that enough? If materials are genuinely from space, does that prove alien involvement or just unusual sourcing? If patients always report similar experiences, does that show a real mystery or shared cultural programming? The standards for proof seem to shift. It depends on what answer someone wants to reach. Those who believe in alien contact see every implant as confirmation. Those who reject that possibility find other explanations for each case. The middle ground proves surprisingly hard to occupy, the place where evidence is weighed fairly, without decided conclusions. The implants challenge our categories and labels. They are not quite medical devices. We can't identify their makers or purposes. They are not quite natural. They show signs of design and assembly. They are not quite evidence. They can be understood in multiple ways. They exist in the in-between space, where science meets mystery, where the material world meets the unknown. And in that space, easy answers dissolve. We are left with questions that may outlive us all. What did these people experience? Who placed these objects inside them? What purpose do they serve? Are the patients being watched, tracked, or influenced? Is this happening to others who haven't found their implants yet? Will we ever understand the full scope of this mystery? And perhaps most unsettling of all, if this is real, if beings are placing devices in human bodies without permission, what does that mean for our sense of safety in the world? The removed objects sit in their containers, keeping their secrets. The patients carry their memories and uncertainties. The researchers continue their tests, hoping the next one will provide clarity. And somewhere, perhaps, the beings responsible continue their work, placing new implants in new subjects, moving forward whatever plan drives them. The mystery continues because it is larger than any single case, more complex than any single explanation. It asks us to consider possibilities we would rather ignore. and to admit that some mysteries may never fully resolve. In recent years, new technology has opened doors to deeper investigation. 3D scanning can now map the internal structure of implants without destroying them. Advanced DNA analysis can examine the biological membranes in ways never before possible. Some researchers have begun using artificial intelligence to identify patterns across hundreds of cases, patterns that human analysis might miss. These tools may eventually provide answers, or they may simply deepen the mystery further. There are also reports of implants that have never been removed, patients who choose to keep them. Some say they feel a connection to the objects, a sense that removing them would be wrong somehow. Others fear what might happen if they take them out. Will the beings who placed them return? Will there be consequences they can't foresee? These questions keep some people living with their implants indefinitely, carrying their secrets beneath the skin. The phenomenon has also attracted the attention of private research organizations, groups funded by wealthy individuals interested in the unexplained. Some of these organizations have collected extensive databases of implant cases. They conduct their own analyses away from public scrutiny. What they've found, they rarely share. This has led to speculation about what they might know, what evidence they might be withholding. Are the findings too disturbing to release, or simply too inconclusive to matter? There are whispers in research circles of implants that have shown unusual activity, objects that seem to activate or deactivate at specific times. Some patients report that their implants cause sensations during particular astronomical events, during solar flares, or when certain planets align. These claims are difficult to verify, but they add another layer to an already complex mystery. If true, they suggest the implants might be responding to signals from beyond Earth. Some investigators have noted geographical patterns in implant cases. Certain regions seem to have higher concentrations of reports, areas near military bases, regions with frequent UFO sightings, places with ancient historical significance. Is this meaningful, or simply a reflection of where people are more likely to look for and report such things? The answer remains unclear. The medical community continues to struggle with how to handle these cases. When a patient comes in claiming to have an alien implant, what should a doctor do? Order expensive imaging to investigate? Dismiss the claim as delusional? Refer to a psychiatrist? There are no standard protocols. Each physician must decide individually. This inconsistency means some real cases likely go uninvestigated, while others receive attention they might not deserve. Insurance companies add another complication. They typically won't cover removal of implants deemed non-medical. If the object isn't causing physical symptoms, removal is considered elective. This leaves patients paying out of pocket for procedures that can cost thousands. Some can't afford it. They live with their implants not by choice but by financial necessity. This economic barrier means we may be missing data from entire segments of the population. The psychological impact on patients varies widely. Some handle it well, they accept what happened and move forward. Others develop anxiety disorders, depression, paranoia about being watched or controlled. A few become consumed by their experience. It dominates their thoughts and conversations. They join online communities where everyone shares similar stories. These communities can provide support, but they can also reinforce fears and encourage unhealthy fixation. Children who have implants face unique challenges. They often struggle to articulate what they've experienced. Adults may dismiss their accounts as imagination or nightmares. Yet when physical evidence exists, it can't be ignored. How does a child process the knowledge that something unknown placed an object in their body? How do parents cope with this reality? These questions have no easy answers. There have been attempts to communicate with whoever might be responsible for the implants. Some researchers have tried broadcasting messages into space. Others have used meditation and consciousness techniques. Trying to make mental contact with potential non-human intelligences, the results have been inconclusive at best. No clear responses, no definitive contact, just more questions and ambiguous experiences. The legal implications of the implant phenomenon remain largely unexplored. If beings are placing devices in humans without consent, is this assault? Is it illegal experimentation? Who has jurisdiction over such cases? Especially if the perpetrators aren't human or aren't from Earth. These are questions our legal system has no framework to address. They exist in a gray area beyond current law. Some conspiracy theorists believe governments are behind the implants, that they're testing advanced tracking or control technology on unwitting citizens, using alien abduction stories as cover. While this seems far-fetched, government programs like MKUltra prove that unethical human experimentation has happened. Could something similar be occurring now, with more sophisticated technology? It's a disturbing possibility that can't be entirely dismissed. Others suggest the implants might be beneficial. Perhaps they're medical devices placed by benevolent beings, monitoring our health, or even treating diseases before they manifest. Some patients have reported improved health after discovering their implants. Though whether this is related or coincidental remains unknown, could we be rejecting help out of fear and misunderstanding? The religious implications trouble many believers. If beings are abducting humans and implanting devices, what does this mean for faith? Are these beings demons, angels, or something entirely outside religious frameworks? Different religions offer different interpretations, but none have definitive answers. This spiritual uncertainty adds to the distress many patients feel. As technology advances, detection may become easier. Future medical scanners might routinely identify foreign objects during regular checkups. If implants are as common as some researchers believe, we might discover millions of people are carrying them, unknowingly. What would happen then? Would it cause mass panic, force governments to acknowledge the phenomenon, or would it simply become normalized? Another strange aspect of modern life we accept without fully understanding. The implant mystery represents one of the most persistent puzzles in modern times. It bridges the gap between the physical and the unexplained, between hard evidence and subjective experience, between what we can measure and what we can't comprehend. For every answer uncovered, two new questions emerge. The mystery expands rather than resolves. Those who carry these objects live in a strange reality. They exist between two worlds, the ordinary world where such things shouldn't exist, and the hidden world where clearly they do. They are unwilling ambassadors to a truth most people refuse to believe, carrying proof beneath their skin that something beyond our understanding is happening, has been happening, and shows no signs of stopping. If you have thoughts about what these implants might really be, or if you've encountered something similar yourself, share your perspective in the comments below. And if you want to explore more unsettling mysteries that challenge our comfortable understanding of reality, subscribe to the channel. There are always more questions ahead than clear answers. And sometimes asking the right questions matters most.